All right. Hello. Welcome, everyone. I'm Jules Ostara, and I'm so glad to have you joining us. I'm an intuitive artist and writer, if you don't know me already, living in the southern Blue Ridge Mountains in the U.S. So welcome to my studio, and I am so delighted, and it's my pleasure to have Rika Dehombreux. She can correct me if needed after I introduce her. An artist, an intuitive artist from Belgium here with us today. She was raised close to nature and wonderful storytellers. She has always been fascinated with art, philosophy, myths, legends, and legends from different parts of the world, and especially of ancient civilizations. And this reflects in her artwork. And I asked Rika to join us today because we've been following one another for a while online. And we are in some art groups together, quite a few, which is such a wonderful blessing to have with the internet, that we can meet artists around the world and have this kind of conversation like this. So I'm grateful for that. And her perspectives interest me a lot, in the way that she shares her artwork and also what she has to say about it. And also when she responds to others' artwork and what she has to say sometimes about what she intuits or, sees, hears, listening in to other people's art. So I wanted to have a conversation with her about that, about intuition and having conversations with art from either side, whether you are a creative artist yourself and, maybe want to lean more into the intuitive or see what other perspectives are on it. Or if you just appreciate art and want to have more deep conversations with it and let it be an even deeper blessing in your life, I guess, is how I would say it. So I've asked Rika to share with us how she uses her intuition and art together, how they kind of work as tools with one another, whether it's art to tap into your intuition or using your intuition to create art. And so would you, Rika, please say hello and anything else you'd like to add, and then dive in with some of whatever you'd like to start with to say about that.
So hello, Jules. Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. So I would like to start with tell a little bit about how my journey began, how I became an intuitive artist. Mm-hmm. So I have always been drawing and painting and been creative. But at a certain point in my life, there is always a question like, okay, I feel like drawing, but what to draw? Mm-hmm. And like exercises in school, I thought were like a bit boring at times. Perspective, shadowing, all that. And so I was not really interested anymore in like learning academically more. And still I always had this thing like, okay, I want to be creative. I don't know what to do. And then came this point that all of a sudden I started just painting and a fairy appeared. So, and I was like, can I do this? Mm-hmm. And then another appeared and another. And so the first that appeared were fairies. And after that, Buddhas. And after that, light beings. And then fantastical flowers. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering like, okay, I started to look into like, what kind of an artist am I? Mm-hmm. What is this called? And so I found out about intuitive art and I started looking into that, and I thought that's what I most identify with. Mm-hmm. So for me, this intuition came naturally. Mm-hmm. Now, I also think when you look at art, that how to tap into your intuition, I think it's a natural thing. I think everybody has it. It's just a question, I think, to get rid of prejudices.
Mm-hmm.
Like we all learn like what art should be,
Mm-hmm.
or what art should communicate. And perhaps that gets in the way of feeling intuitively. When we talk about communication with art, I think a piece speaks to you or it doesn't.
Yeah.
And if it speaks to you, then I think you are intuitively in conversation with it.
Mm-hmm. May I add something there or ask something?
Yes, please.
When you were mentioning about what kind of artist you were and figuring that out, I had a very similar experience and path to that. So I didn't know, wasn't exposed to art from that kind of approach, you know, through schooling when I was younger. And so it took me on a roundabout kind of journey to come back and figure that out, because I hadn't been exposed to it in that way of listening or letting things flow and just seeing what appears. And so I think that is a different, for those who haven't, who may have had similar experiences to you and I, where that wasn't part of our, you know, what was on our radar, so to speak, within the art world. It is something of like a revelation that there's this other side of art. Now, maybe for others, you know, some may have grown up more in a culture that has more of that, but I was similar to you. So I think it's really interesting that this is now becoming a more, I think there's more exposure to it with the internet. More people are seeing this side of it, and it opens up a whole new world for our creativity, right? That for those of us who were like you, who thought we wanted to do something, but we didn't just want to paint. I love Bob Ross, but I didn't want to just paint the, you know, happy accident, the landscapes or whatever. And so I was able to take aspects of that and incorporate it into this later, but it was having that fresh perspective and understanding that it didn't, like you said, you don't have to have this preconceived notion of what the art needs to be ahead of time. That was a major shifting and turning point for me. So I just wanted to reiterate that or highlight what you said about that, because I think for anyone who might be where we were on the path and are coming into it, that's a big thing to do, is to let go of any preconceived notions and then listen underneath all of that. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. And also that this kind of art, which is not considered academical, is accepted. Now there's a lot of people who are really drawn to this type of art, to this type of intuitive expression.
Yeah. So would you like to share some examples with us, or what? Do you have something else you'd like to say first?
I was going to say something about the other way around, so I'm not sure anymore. So there was like communication, using your intuition to tap into the art. And what is the other way around?
If you are maybe needing help to tap into your intuition, that art might help you to spark. For me, I found that, like with the inspiration cards that I do, sometimes that, or browsing online with someone else's art, if that's what I'm doing at the moment, I've noticed personally that sometimes just you were saying you think it's an instinct, I think you didn't use that word, but that it's natural to, when you're looking at art, it is an easy, natural way, I think, in kind of to your intuition, because that's what you're going to use. If you get past the preconceptions, like you mentioned, of what you think, and get below that, then you start to naturally tap into your own intuition or imagination, or have a conversation with it. You almost can't help it if, like you said, it speaks to you, if it's one of the pieces that does.
Yes.
Which not all art might, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's very personal, I think. And that's what I would like to elaborate a little bit on. Like, I think there is communication with art on several levels.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I paint intuitively, I don't know what's going to appear.
Mm-hmm.
But some pieces go very deep. Some don't speak to me, but it has happened that I posted them and apparently they have a message for others.
Mm-hmm.
And then some pieces are just like beautiful, at least to me, maybe
Mm-hmm.
to some others. And I would like to elaborate a little bit on that.
Okay.
So this first one, this one goes, let's see if I can have it straight. Yeah. This
And
one
real
goes.
quick, before you do that, I just want to let people know that I will also have images of all of these that she's sharing with the blog post on my website so that you can click and look at, have a more clear, bigger look yourself if you'd like to.
So this one has an emotional story behind it. Like a few years ago, my mom's home got flooded.
Mm.
And we suffered a lot of she a bit later got a heart attack. A lot of our stuff got destroyed,
Mm-hmm.
like memories from my grandparents got destroyed. So it was very painful, so very emotional experience and very difficult to go through. And I was wondering, like, okay, I'm doing this intuitive art thing. Why wouldn't I paint and see what happens?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at the painting, I started the painting, and what do I see appear is water.
Ah.
So I got very concerned about that.
Mm-hmm. So the background is mostly water?
So the background is mostly water. There's only that tiny little strip on top where the sun does appear that is like air.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought like, oh no, yet more water. And I decided, look, this is intuitive painting. This is what appears. I'm going to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the lotus appears. Okay, I was still like in doubt about the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then this heart in the middle of the flower started developing. So here.
Mm-hmm. Right there, I can see it.
And then the butterflies came also. And there it started to make sense to me because that one I recognize as transformation. Mm-hmm. So I thought, okay, good. You are going in the good direction. This is about transformation. And then when the painting was finished, then I understood the deeper meaning of it. Like, actually, it is like, it can be interpreted as a lotus flower. Mm-hmm. Maybe many of us know that the lotus flower is the symbol of spirituality. Like, it comes out of the mud, it grows through the waters, which is symbolic for emotion, mm-hmm. and through the troubled waters also. And then it goes to the universe and it opens up and can receive and give, mm-hmm. to the universe. And that's kind of what I saw appearing here. And what's more is like in the heart of the flower, there is a smaller flower, mm-hmm. which seems to be
right there's good.
Well rooted, mm-hmm. and protected, and strong, and also able to receive and give to the universe. And I thought, that's my home. Yeah. That's very emotional to me. So it represents to me the strength of the family, of the heart, of the pulling together, of the getting through this. And then the butterflies around are transformation. So I thought this was a very strong and personal message that I got from this one.
And can I add, while you're sharing it, it is feeling, as we're recording this, it's there's almost always a lot going on in the world, right? But at this moment, there are various outbreaks going on, and it's affecting me where I live. And as you're sharing that, even though it was a totally different story and personal experience for you, that same feeling of hope that you shared, was lifting my heart in a very different moment of things that we're going through, and releasing and, growing through it together. So I love how you chose that one. And then it could, as we're speaking here, unplanned, I could have my own conversation. It could be touching me at the same time with these, similar messages, yet ones that apply personally for me. And isn't that part of the amazing power of intuitive art and healing art, and any art really, but especially when we let it kind of have its way. Do you consider it a co-creative process?
Yes, because I personally believe it is divinely guided. And so I think we are all connected.
Right.
So I do think it is co-creative.
It felt that way while you were speaking, so I was just curious.
As a matter of fact, I think with the next one that I'm going to show, I feel there are symbols. Like when I look up a lot of intuitive artists, and I see like very different styles, very different color palettes, very different topics. But there are these symbols that keep coming through all over the world. While we don't know each other, we have all different backgrounds, we have different educations, and still we all produce the same symbols. And even if we don't know what they mean, so I do think that we are all connected.
Like a collective or a harmonizing, like in a song sense, like there's all these different versions, voices coming in to create a bigger, broader, like symphony kind of situation. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
It's like there are archetypes there that we all are connected to them, and we all know them, maybe even from previous lives, if you believe in that sort of thing. But we don't necessarily consciously know anymore what they mean or what they are.
That's another good, as you move into the next one, another thing I thought of while you were sharing that is, how much do you think is kind of like, are you, I know from my own experience and practice that most of the time I don't know what's really going to come next. And then there's this kind of question in my head is, how much of it am I deciding? That's why I asked if it was co-creative, and how much is kind of flowing through me. And it's an interesting dance to me to how much, when you're paint this way or create this way, how much you control and how much you let go and get out of the way.
It's always different for me.
Yeah.
There are paintings that I immediately kind of like go into the more academic things that I know about painting, like color and so forth. And then there are paintings that I finish from beginning to the end, totally like almost with my eyes closed. So,
and by the end, is it like you're like, wow, look what I did. I mean, I didn't know I could do that. Like if you would tell me like paint a fairy, I cannot do that. It's like, and it's always different. But I also don't think that should stop you or interfere. If you feel like, okay, now I'm going to switch to my logical brain, then I think that's fine. Because the point is, to me, as an artist, is to create something beautiful,
something that is going to give some joy or hope or happiness to someone else. And that's ultimately the point. So I don't think we should sit there and, oh no, I'm thinking now, or so I think that's fine.
It goes back and forth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have the same experience. Okay, I'd love to see what you have to share next.
So I would like to show this one because I have heard a lot about sacred geometry, but it's something that I haven't studied yet. So I don't know anything about it. And this is what appears. So this is something, when we talk about communication, I find it beautiful, but I don't see a message in it. But someone who is clear on sacred geometry, who has studied that, who feels connected to that, might see a strong meaning into this. So this is obviously like the pyramid shapes.
Pull it back just a little bit. It's blurry. Can you pull? Oh, there we go, right there. That's good.
And so there are 3 of them.
I see the 3 pyramids.
And there is also like a blue lotus in the middle. So I know there is like a strong symbolic meaning to the blue lotus, like in ancient Egypt as well as in Buddhism. But I don't know about these pyramids. So for me, this communication, I think for other people, it might go much deeper, who have knowledge about sacred geometry. So that's the second level.
Do you feel that sometimes either the paintings themselves might be guides or messengers, or that you might be a messenger that they're flowing through?
Yes, because it kind of, when these fairies started appearing, I always loved fairies, but to me they were like a childhood memory, like something nice from my childhood, fairy tales and so forth. But when they started appearing, like I have an example too, so I think this one is really a messenger to me. I called it fairy blessings.
It just makes me want to take a deep breath and close my eyes. It feels so peaceful.
Yes. And I started doing research on fairies. Like I studied a bit of the mythology, where they come from. And then I discovered Fairy magazine.
And this was after they started coming through in the paintings?
After they started coming through, I discovered fairy festivals. I participated in one. And this whole fairy world opened to me. And so I think this definitely was a messenger, like, okay, you need to go and look for the fairies.
Like an invitation.
An invitation and maybe a guidance. And a bit like maybe the sacred geometry. Maybe I need to go a little bit more into that. But also that I follow intuitively. Like you cannot go and pursue like everything. So it should not become a thing like, oh, I have to know all this about this or that. Or
so the things that really excite you the most, you decide to go learn more about, kind of thing?
Yes, on the moment. So maybe later something else might become more prominent. Like also in terms of communication, I think today a painting talks more to you or differently to you than tomorrow.
Yes, very much. So how do you, if you're looking at someone else's art, if you don't mind my asking, how do you kind of feel that you start a conversation, or does it just happen that sometimes they stop you in your tracks, that sometimes you just want to spend more time looking at it and other times you don't? How do you kind of trying to figure out how to best phrase it. How do you begin a conversation with a painting, whether it's yours after the fact that you've finished, or whether it's someone else's that you're, like, if it were something that I would hold up to show you, do you have any suggestions for people who might need a little help to kind of begin that? You know, do you have any questions, or does it just happen so naturally that you don't think about it?
For me, it happens so naturally that I don't think about it. But I feel like the biggest problem is that when people feel that they cannot go into conversation, that they cannot use that intuition, is the
word trust.
Prejudice of the academic world. Like art should have a socio-economical message. Art should have a political message. Art should like be this and that, and maybe people feel like, oh, should I like this, or should I? And I think that gets in the way of your intuition. I think if you let your heart speak, it speaks to you or it doesn't. Really. Yes. Yeah.
So trust your instincts, trust your gut or your heart kind of thing.
Yes.
Is what as you said it, I kept having the word trust come up to me. And I think there's a lot with intuition. The more I trust myself, the more I feel that I'm able to tune in, if that, you know, and explore more. And maybe it also has to do with my imagination. And I think sometimes people think, oh, it's just my imagination. But, well, that's okay. Your imagination might be part of your intuition, I think.
Yes, definitely. And there are times that it all stops, at least for me. Nothing is coming in. And I feel like with the training that I had, the academic training I had, that it helps me giving shape to what comes through. So when this happens, that nothing comes in, that nothing happens, I take a course, or I read a book, or I learn a technique, or maybe I go do some realistic drawing, just to train myself. And then when the time is there, it will come again, spontaneously. So it's not something I think that can be forced or should be forced. So I'm saying this about intuition and academic training, but I also think there is a big value to academic training. So I think all training that you can get and want to get or are drawn to, you should get. I mean, it's always going to help you in your intuitive work.
And then you can mix it in your own way, right? You take something from here and something from there, and you mix it in your own.
I think it will sink to your subconscious, and your intuition will pull it out as it goes.
Yes, I agree. I see that we are coming up on close to half an hour. So if there's something else that you really wanted to say or communicate when, you know, about this topic, I would say let's jump to that to make sure we cover that. If you feel that you've pretty well covered everything you wanted, that's great too. But I wanted to ask, was there anything else that you really had felt strongly about wanting to share?
Yes, there was still a third level that I wanted to quickly cover. Like, for example, this one. This is something totally different. And to me, it is just, I'm attracted to it. I like the colors, I like the shapes, but it doesn't have a message for me. I mean, not spoken message for me. And when that happens, I think we can also just say like, okay, I like it, it's beautiful. That is strong enough, I think, of a message. So we don't always have to go digging deep into meanings and interpretation.
Yes, and I think that's such a great thing to end with too, because that's such an important thing in life, in all of it, right? We can, in art and in life, that sometimes it's okay to simplify, or to just enjoy, to just let our feelings flow without having to overanalyze or understand or assign meaning to all these signs and things that we might be feeling sometimes. I know for me particularly, I have a tendency sometimes to go there. And so learning to do what you just said and just be able to a surface level kind of feeling of something and let that be as it is, that has been, for me, it's been really helpful to sometimes lighten up and feel lighter, feel like I don't have to understand or control or any of that kind of thing with stuff. Like this past weekend, I was feeling overwhelmed with a lot of the stuff going on in the world, and I just spent a lot of time outside because we finally had a nice day after it's been raining a lot. And that day I came in and I just painted some colors very similar to what you just shared, and that's all it was. And I made my first post online in like a week because I hadn't had anything I really felt like sharing, and I purposefully don't push myself to share if it's not genuine, that I have something worthwhile to share. And that day I did, and it was just that sometimes just appreciating the colors of the day is enough, and be present, and sometimes we need that reminder in a world that is so focused on achievement or accolades or rewards or, all those kinds of things, I think. And so I appreciate that you shared that that you brought that up, because when we're talking about intuition, sometimes there's the tendency to think that has to be this deep dive, and it doesn't, right? So thank you. Are there any other last tips that you'd like to share before we close?
I think I covered it all.
All right. Well, I very much appreciate you taking the time, Rika, to share with us. Thank you so much. And I will be sure to share your website and these few pieces that you've shared with us in the post so that people can take a deeper look if they want and get to know you more. And I hope for everyone who joined us, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that something here that time that you're talking about where you sometimes have to replenish or step away, that if anyone is in that space while you're watching this, I hope that this might be inspirational in some way or encouraging in some way for you. So thank you very much.